record and nobody reminded me. Anyways, the first question that you have is, what is price? Okay. And the second bullet point that you have basically says price goes by different names. So let me ask you this. When you buy a plane ticket, what do you pay? What is it called? Go on.
So
Sir,
they
I
are
think
not
we cannot
slides.
see the slides.
Now, I know you cannot see the slide. That's okay. Don't worry. My question is, if when you buy a plane ticket, you know what do you call it? What is it called?
Ticket.
Fare. Okay. When you pay for the class that you're taking, what is it called? When you pay for the class that you're taking, what do you call? I cannot see. These chats are going. You have to verbalize. Sorry,
Fee.
Yes, sir.
fees or tuition, right? When you live in an apartment, Sandra,
Rent.
what do you pay?
Rent.
Not the amount. It's called rent, right?
Rent.
Okay.
Rent.
So you see, we have talked about rent, we have talked about fees, we have talked about tuition, we have talked about fare. And let's say, Sandra, you're driving from Windsor to Toronto and the police stops you and writes you, a ticket. What do you pay?
Fine.
It's called a fine, right? So you see, these are all prices that you pay, but prices come in different names. So it could be rent, it could be, okay, so if you borrow money, what do you pay? What's the price of borrowing money?
Interest.
Interest is the price of borrowing money, right? So price is actually the value that we ascribe to a product. Price is the value that we ascribe to a product, okay? So you see, price goes by different names. It can be rent, it could be interest, it could be tuition, it could be fare, it could be fee, but these are nothing but prices for a variety of things. But price is the value that we ascribe to a product, assign to a product. For certain types of products, particularly services, it's very difficult to come up with a price. If you're in the consulting business, how do you decide on how much to charge? If you're an expert witness in a court, for example, how do you decide on how much to charge? If I'm teaching in the executive MBA program at some of the universities, what is a good price for me? They have their rates that they pay to the instructors, but I have to agree with that, right? If I think that that's not a good price, I'm not going to basically teach there for too low a salary, if you will. That's the price that they're paying for me to teach at that university. Okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I guess the question is, why is price or pricing important? Why should we study this? For those of you that are business minded, you immediately will say, hey, you know what? The price you set for your product affects your profits. How? Why? Well, by influencing demand for the product. Okay, the higher the price, the lower the demand, and vice versa. Okay, so it affects the demand for your product, and of course, then it affects your total revenue. So when you deduct costs from revenue, basically you're looking at profits. I'm making it too simplistic, but that's okay at this point in time. So price or pricing is important, subject that we should be studying, because it affects profits by influencing demand for the product and therefore the total revenue that you earn by selling that product. You with me? So that is basically the point of view from the perspective of an economist. Okay? But pricing is also important because it has a tremendous psychological influence on whether we buy a product, when we buy a product, what we feel about a product, or how we see a product. And we will talk about those things. And the psychological aspect of pricing is something that most of us do not quite think about when we are asked about pricing. We always think in terms of, the numbers, which is fine, in terms of profits, which is fine, in terms of revenue, which is fine, in terms of, elasticity of demand, how it affects demand, which is all wonderful. But we don't think in terms of the psychological effects of pricing. So let me ask you this question before I go into the second point, which is something that a lot of us don't kind of think about also. Have you heard of this brand name?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay. So we have heard of the brand name Kia. So what? Tell me your perceptions of Kia in terms of price, quality, how much you're willing to pay, blah blah blah. Somebody, anybody. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm looking at your perceptions. So Dara says low price. Okay. What else?
Affordable price.
Affordable price. Anything else? Quality and all these things. Low fuel consumption. Lower what? Sabina? Don't start texting because I'll lose the texts very quickly. So just tell me what do you think?
Sir, it
Anything
has a
else about the Kia?
modern design. Modern design of
Modern
Verna.
design? Yeah, so they have basically changed their design so that designs are attractive. So without googling, for example, this is small size where we are going through this exercise without googling. Okay, so tell me how much you're willing to pay for a Kia. We said low price, etc., etc. So how much are you willing to pay for a Kia? I mean, realistically, you don't get any cars below $15,000. So if that is the floor for those of you that are not in this part of the world, so let's say if that is the floor, or maybe $14,000, how much are you willing to pay for a Kia if it happens to be a small car, low price, etc., etc. in your mind? No right or wrong answer. Just I'm playing this game. So just be honest and tell me. 15 lakh in INR. I have no idea how to convert that right away. And let's talk
$20,000.
about US dollars,
Yeah,
US
about
dollar prices,
10,000.
because in India the taxes add up. So in the US, let's say below 10,000, no, below 10,000 you don't get any new cars. That's why I said let's say 12 to 15,000 is the base, is the floor below which you don't get a new car these days. So how much are you willing to pay for a Kia?
$20,000.
$20,000 to 30,000, 20,000. Yes, okay. So 2,000 US dollars, Jayati, what happened to you? 16,000, says Anisa.
Sir,
No,
15,000.
2,000, they'll just show you a picture
I
of a
missed
Kia.
1 0, sir.
Oh, you missed 10. Okay, all right. 20,000 is a reasonable number. Okay. So very good. So those are the acceptable prices in your mind. And fine. No worries. Okay. So yesterday, I don't know what I was doing on Facebook. This Kia ad popped up. You with me? This Kia ad popped up, and the design looked kind of fancy. So I said, let me find out. And it's called the Kia Stinger, as in stinging, Stinger. So I said, okay. So I clicked on it, and then they want my email address, my zip code, and all this. I said, to hell with this. I didn't want to give them information. So I went online and I typed in Kia, and these things popped up, and I was looking at the Kia Stinger. Okay. So the Kia Stinger, first thing that sort of took me off guard, caught me off guard, was it says it's a luxury car. I said, Kia, luxury? I cannot connect these two things in my head. Okay. And then I was looking at the prices, and I think they start at more than $30,000, and it goes up to like $55,000. And they're comparing this Kia with Kia versus Porsche, and I'm going, are you crazy? You're comparing a Kia with a Porsche. And then I said to myself, $55,000 for a Kia? I'm never going to pay that much money for a Kia. 20,000, yes. If I need to have a second car, go to school, come back, go to the grocery store, come back. But $55,000 for a Kia, I'm not paying it. So you see, what is happening over here is the concept of price acceptability playing in my head. The Kia might be a fine car, the Stinger might be a top of the line car, and I haven't driven it. Maybe I would fall in love if I were to drive it. But in my mind, I cannot think of Kia and $55,000 together. That is the psychological effect of pricing. Customers' price acceptability, and that has a strong influence on what kind of price you can set for your car. Now, if it has to be a $55,000 Kia, you have to somehow change the mindset of the consumers so that $55,000 for a Kia becomes an acceptable number. Any questions? Okay, so let's move forward and let's look at the second point, right? So first point is, we need to study price or pricing because it affects profits by influencing demand and total revenue. The second point is it is, and I'll show you the whole thing, it is the only variable in the marketing mix. The only variable in the marketing mix which can be quickly, almost instantaneously adjusted, which can be quickly, in fact, instantaneously almost adjusted. So when you look at, for example, the airline industry, after class you go on and you look for fares, let's say flying from Detroit to New York, and you keep track of it, it changes very, very, very frequently depending on the type of demand there is, how many flights are there in a given day, the day of the week, for example, the time of the day, it changes, constantly it's changing. Okay, so it's called dynamic pricing. So it's the only variable in the marketing mix which can be quickly adjusted. People are not flying as much these days. So you see these huge discounts being offered, like Hong Kong for $500, $550, and I think that's a round trip fare, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, long time ago when we had this SARS problem, that was also basically another virus. It's the same COVID, different name those days, but it was basically restricted to certain parts of the world. People were not traveling, so in those days you could go to Hong Kong and come back to the US, maybe from the West Coast, but even then for like $350 round trip. Okay, when I was thinking of going to New York, when I checked on airline prices, yeah, this is Spirit Airlines, and people don't like to travel on Spirit Airlines, but this is an hour and 15 minutes flight. I don't care about how comfortable or uncomfortable the seats are. Basically I got New York round trip fare, $75 from Detroit, round trip. If I drive, I'm going to spend twice or thrice that amount in terms of gas, in terms of toll, and all these kinds of things. So that is the nature of the situation now in the airline industry, and they are basically adjusting their fares in a lower direction very, very quickly. So it's the only variable in the marketing mix which can be very, very quickly adjusted. You cannot change the product overnight. You cannot change the distribution system overnight. You cannot change your advertising strategy instantaneously. 2-3 hours you can change it, because if it's online advertising, but pricing by just pressing one button on this super frame computer, you can change prices. That's the idea. Any questions? All right. So importance of price. I have this example which is dated, so I won't spend time here. We'll move forward. Essentially, this is what happened when last time I think Apple introduced their iPhone or iPad or whatever it is 8 years ago, and the moment they introduced their price, if you look at the Twitter, basically the tweets went up because they were now talking more about this product, the price, etc., compared to when the price wasn't introduced. Okay, so let's move forward now and let's look at pricing objectives. Let us look at pricing objectives. After we look at pricing objectives, ladies and gentlemen, we will look at factors affecting pricing decisions. So when we look at pricing objectives, we can look at those in isolation, it's fine. But when we talk about factors affecting pricing decisions, and we look at those factors in isolation, flags go up in people's heads and they're thinking, why are you talking about these things in isolation? Shouldn't they affect pricing decisions together? And my answer would be absolutely yes. They will affect pricing decisions together, but let's first try to understand these things one at a time, and then we'll put that together nicely in a model where you can see how all of these can affect pricing decisions. So that's the plan of action as we move forward. Oh, by the way, have you guys done the evaluations for this course? I don't know where it is, how you have access to it, but have you guys done that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so some of you are saying not yet, some of you are saying yes, sir, but please, all of you should be doing it. If I find some email from the administration, we'll do it. Plus, go in, I don't know where it is, but you have to do it on your own. Anyways, so let's move forward. I just wanted to remind it before we all vanish. Okay, so let's move forward and let's talk about pricing objectives. Okay, let's talk about pricing objectives. There are 5 major pricing objectives that we'll talk about. So Dinesh says you win site, so it's over there somewhere. If I find an administration email, I'll share it with you guys, but please do that. Okay, so we'll talk about 5 different pricing objectives. Okay, and it is, you don't have to do it today, you can do it after the last class, but do it before it basically vanishes. Okay, So pricing objectives. We'll talk about survival as a pricing objective. We'll talk about price maximization. We'll talk about volume-oriented pricing objective, image-oriented pricing objective, and stabilization as a pricing objective. So let us get started and talk about survival as a pricing objective. Again, we'll go back to the airline example. What do I have here? What are the two dates that we have over here? 2020, which is now as we speak, and then we had 2008. Why do I have 2008? That is when we had the Great Recession.
It was the recession time.
Recession, exactly. And then, before that, I think 2001, 2 or 3, I guess, we had this other virus that we had, the SARS. We had SARS, we had MERS, for example, and things happened to the airline industry also at that time. So what happened, I think, in 2008 was, if I'm not mistaken, that's when they started decoupling, for example, baggage from the fare price. So they were charging you for bags that you were checking in. On international flights, they don't do that, I think, and on some flights, actually, they let you check in, old style, 2 suitcases. But, on some airlines, it's 1 suitcase, the second one will cost you money, okay? But they started charging baggage fees, and Spirit Airlines, as I told you a few minutes ago, I mean, they not only charge you baggage fees to check in baggage, they actually will charge you fees for your carry-on luggage if you store it, basically, in the bin, overhead bin. Anyways, then things improved, but they never actually took, I guess, got rid of those baggage fees, and actually they collected a record baggage fee, basically, and they're making a lot of money from baggage fees. Anyways, airlines are setting their prices with the goal of surviving in the short run. Travel now, I don't think it is going to be normalized before 2022, let's say at the earliest, right? So they have to basically do things to be able to survive. One of the things they can do is basically downsize, cut down on the number of routes that they're flying. But when you downsize, you'll have to lay people off. So there are repercussions for those things. So, they will have to strike a balance between severely downsizing versus downsizing a little bit and serving the consumers and so on and so forth. Or they can get out of the basically small markets, if you will, because they're not as lucrative and fly, only in big cities. But there are restrictions on how much you can do that. Anyways, when we talk about survival as a pricing objective, the idea is you set your price with the goal of surviving in the short run. You set your prices with the goal of surviving in the short run. Okay, if you look at New York City apartment situation, because a lot of people are working from home, a lot of them have moved out of New York City and they moved back to their parents' place, for example, or basically the suburbs or out of state. Okay, there are tax implications. I mean, you just cannot move out of New York City and move to Kentucky and have New York as your place of employment and not pay taxes in New York. You have to pay your taxes. And then when you go to Kentucky, they might say, well, you're working over here, you have to pay taxes. So there are, I guess, disincentives to move out. But what has happened in the New York City apartment market is the prices have gone down. So apartments, these studio apartments that would rent for, let's say, $26,100 a month, all right, a small, 500 or 450 square foot apartments, they're now renting for $2,150. So they're setting their prices with the goal of surviving in the in the short run. If they didn't do this and people wouldn't kind of live in those apartments, maybe some people would go bankrupt, and that could result in serious trouble for the economy if many, I guess these apartment owners go bankrupt. So any questions regarding survival as a pricing objective? Okay. Assuming you have survived, then the other option is essentially this, which is profit maximization. Profit maximization as a pricing objective, which is very easy to understand. You're trying to maximize profits. But there are two ways of looking at this number. There are two ways in which you can look at the concept of profit maximization. One, ladies and gentlemen, is where you are essentially trying to maximize what's known as your target margin. What is this? Target margin is defined as the ratio of your profits to your sales. The other way of looking at this is where you are trying to maximize your target ROI. What does this mean, folks? ROI?
Return on
Rate,
investment.
Return on
rate on
investments.
investment.
Return on investments. So what is that? It's profit divided by total dollar investment. So ladies and gentlemen, in both of these cases, what you have in the numerator is profit. This is the Greek letter pi for profit, as we used to use in economics. When I was in economics in the 1970s, I guess they still use pi for profit. But what changes is what you have in the denominator in this box over here. In the first instance, you have sales. In the second instance, you have total dollar investment. So essentially, you're looking at profit, but you're looking at profit in relation to something that's different in each case. There's nothing right or wrong with this method. Nobody has said that you cannot look at profit from both angles, profit maximization from both angles. What I'm doing here is I'm presenting you with sort of full information. And because it's not a finance class, we won't get into details, this thing. But it's good enough to know for a marketing class that you're trying to oftentimes, by setting your prices, maximize profits, and you can look at profit maximization from two different angles. Very good. All right, let's move forward and let's look at now the third pricing objective, which is volume oriented. Okay. So when we talk about volume oriented, we are talking about maximizing something. That something is either your sales volume or it is your market share, which is of course related to your sales volume, but market share, your sales volume vis-a-vis in comparison with what others are doing in the marketplace. So the first one, this is A, let's say 3A, maximizing sales volume. This is basically independent of what this measurement is, independent of what else is happening in the marketplace, what others are doing in the marketplace. This is an absolute measure. B over here, which is volume oriented, maximizing market share. This has to do, yes, with your sales volume, but in relation to how others are doing in the marketplace in terms of their sales. Let me stop here. Let me give you some breathing time. And let me see if you have any questions before I move forward with number 4 and number 5 on this list. Sandra says didn't get point number 2. Which point number 2, Sandra?
Profit maximization. I couldn't connect it.
So let's say you have your business. Okay, you make cakes, Sandra.
Okay.
Let's say you have training. You have the training to make cakes. You make cakes, and you sell those cakes. As a businesswoman, you might say, "I'm going to set prices to maximize profits." Okay. So what is profit in very short? In very short, it's basically your total revenue minus your total cost, right?
Okay.
It's your total revenue, and we will see examples. It's your total revenue minus, okay, don't text because I'm writing over here. It's your total revenue minus total cost. You with me?
Yes, bro.
So Sandra, let's say you have $100 in total revenue. Okay, and you have $50 in total cost.
Okay.
You with me? How much is your profit?
50.
$50. Okay. So when we talk about profit maximization, and I don't know if you have maximized your profit, but you have $50 in terms of profit. Okay. I will show you, for example, later on when we come back next time, profit maximization happens where not total revenue, total cost, where your marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Okay, don't worry about this. We haven't discussed this. Okay, that is where you maximize your profit. Okay, you with me?
Okay. Yes, bro.
Okay, just focus on this thing first. Total revenue minus total cost. This is your profit.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. So what you're saying is that now you can look at this number individually. Hey, I have $50 in my pocket. Okay. Or you can look at this $50 in relation to how much you have sold, your total sales volume. Okay, so let's say you have sold, let's say I'm just making this up, 200 cakes. You with me?
Yes, Prof. I'm with you.
Okay, so you have made
Yes.
$50 by selling 200 cakes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so divide 50 by 200 on your calculator and tell me how much you have made on each cake that you have sold. You have made 25 cents on each cake you have sold, right? So target margin, here you have 25 cents on each cake that you have sold. Is it 25 or sorry, 50? 50
I
cents.
think it's divided by 50 will be 4.
No, but divide 50 by 200.
50, okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yep.
How much?
0.25 cents.
Sorry, I was correct the first time. Sorry, so I messed up. Yeah, 0.25, 25 cents on each cake. That's what it is. Okay. Now, Sandra, let's say you want to look at target return on investment. So your profit is the same, right? It's the same 50. Let's say $50. You with me?
Yes.
Okay. And let's say for your cake business, you have invested a total of, let's say, $1,000. So basically now what you do is you divide 50 by 1,000 and your total return on investment is 0.05. That's what it is. These are just numbers. And let's say, Sandra, your objective, your goal in life is to basically increase this to 0.10. You work towards that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move forward. Now, Dare, you said I'm confused. You're confused about what?
Yeah, I was confused about the same explanation you gave. The B part, you were talking about the market share maximization.
Okay. So what is the confusion here?
Yeah, I don't understand what you meant by the maximization of the market share. Like, is it in comparison with other, other people selling, or
It has to be. I said that I think 4 times. It has to be in comparison with others. Market share means you have to look at the total market. This is the total market. Okay. This
okay?
is the pie. And let's say just to make it simple, I divided it into 4 equal parts. This is your share, right? So you have
Okay.
25% share of the market. You with me?
Yes, sir.
So basically, you divide how much you have sold by how much everybody else plus you are selling. Okay, that's 25%. You with me?
Yes.
So if this is 100, it's 25 over 100. That's 25%. Let's say you want to maximize it, and your maximization goal is to basically capture 50% of the market.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to price your product in a way so that you capture 50% of the market. That's what market share maximization is.
Okay. Okay. So, like, basically, it's like setting the price in such a way that it gives you certain
50%
percentage.
of the market. Yep. Exactly. Okay. We have 4 minutes, so let's move forward. The fourth pricing objective could be image oriented. Okay. So here the basic idea is this: you set your price to build an image, to project an image, or maintain an image. I'll go back to the $29,000 Cadillac example. Okay. Cadillacs are viewed as luxury cars. You should not be selling a Cadillac car in those days under $30,000 because under $30,000 price and luxury, they don't go together. So there's an inconsistency in terms of image. Okay, so look at this example. Walmart sets its price to reflect a certain type of an image. That's how they started. They build that image, and that's how they're continuing. Neiman Marcus, for example, basically sets prices at the higher end to project basically a luxury image. Louis Vuitton, for example, these are expensive products, and they set their prices that way to project this exclusive image. Okay, so that's the idea of image-oriented pricing. Okay, so you set your price to basically build an image. Bose speakers will never come down in terms of price beyond a certain level. There are other expensive speakers, for example, Bang and Olufsen. These are like $10,000 speakers. Their prices, I don't know if they really worth $10,000. I don't know if the ingredient in those speakers add up to $10,000 or close to $10,000, but it's priced at that level because they want to project a certain image. Louis Vuitton, no matter how much the cost is, they're never going to come down on their prices because they want to project and then maintain a certain image. When you buy homes in the US, in certain subdivisions, new homes, you cannot negotiate on the price. They'll not come down on the price. They'll throw in some free stuff. They'll throw in some upgrades for free, but they will never negotiate on the price because once they negotiate on the price, basically the value of that subdivision comes down. Now, what happens after you have bought it and you're reselling it, that's a whole different story. But new homes, they will not negotiate on the price under normal circumstances. That's image-oriented pricing. Finally, we have what's known as stabilization or status quo pricing. Let me just explain this with the help of an example. So here, it says set price to maintain parity with industry leaders price, Walmart versus Kmart. So there was a time Kmart is not doing very well, but there was a time when actually you would have these Kmart shoppers, for example, just to give you an example, go into Walmart and they'd buy a basket of goods. Now they might be doing it, but the prices are available online, and Kmart would set their prices basically to match Walmart's prices. Okay, so that's a pricing objective, which is stabilization or status quo. They are trying to maintain parity with the industry leader's price. If you go to Best Buy, for example, to buy electronic products, okay, if you ask them, what they'll tell you is that if you ask them, well, are you going to match Amazon's prices? Amazon, let's assume, is the industry leader. They'll say, yes, of course, we'll match Amazon's prices if we can verify those prices, if the product is available, not out of stock, etc., etc. So they will set prices to maintain parity or adjust prices to maintain parity with the industry leader's price. Any questions? Samsung and Apple, do they adjust? The Samsung and Apple neck and neck in terms of pricing? So maybe they do it, and that would be a good example, but I don't know, so I cannot say anything. Or maybe they're doing the same thing. Yes.
Yeah, usually when Samsung or Apple releases a new product,